Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. We are back in Clubhouse 5, just off of Leicester Square by Chinatown. It's the home of people watching the Ashes at the moment, by the looks of it.
It is.
Great day for England yesterday, but we don't know when you're watching this how the cricket is going, so come watch your cricket down here if you want to. But look who's joined me anyway. It's Patrick Van Straten and it's Zach Jalab. Pat, how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I think I'm better than you because you're still recovering, are you not, from a week-long Glasgow virus?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what happened to me post-Glastonbury. I mean, I know what happened at Glastonbury, but then post-Glastonbury, I was in disastrous areas.
Elton John absorbed your soul.
Yeah.
He ate your energy.
So
he could live forever.
Yeah, he did.
How are you? Performance. Yeah, not bad, thank you, mate. Really good. Really good. I feel like this is the first time we've been as a 3 for a while.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
Somebody's been off or things have been changing, but yeah, all good. All good.
Good stuff. Right, okay, let's crack on with the show. As you can see from the title, today we are trying to identify alternative targets to big money transfers. Now, there are some huge sums being banded around for players. You know, we've seen Declan Rice moving for £105 million this week. So today we're going to try and identify budget, semi-budget options, right?
Sure.
For some of the biggest names moving in football. I think we should start with Zach Jalab as the sort of sporting director role. You're going to play the guy who picks the players that we've identified alternatives for.
I like it. And let's kick things off with Mason Mount and Manchester United. Now, when we first started this, it looked like the move actually might have been off at this point, which is kind of what ignited this idea for Sunday Vibes.
And now it's
Since
done.
then, yeah, it looks like terms have been agreed. I think it's 55 million reaching to 60 million. Those 5 million if he like wins the Champions League with United. So he won't be getting 5 million. Not to say that I'm bitter. I am.
Yeah, it is weird to
bitter.
see the sporting director cry this much.
Yeah,
when you're called into
You're
the
so bitter.
Yeah, look, I'm not gonna lie. This is like really sad, really sad. Because I think I said on Monday Vibes when we last spoke about it, we were speaking about it possibly being off, and I then mentioned the possibility of, you know, maybe there's a chance he could sign back for Chelsea, and I just kind of reignited in me this idea that he might stay. I kind of got used to him leaving, and then this news, and I was like, oh, maybe he will stay. But I think it's really sad. I've not felt this bad about someone leaving Chelsea since maybe when Mata joined Manchester United all those years ago. I remember being like a maths lesson and it being confirmed. But this is a guy that like has won the Champions League with us. He is a boyhood well, not necessarily a fan. I think he actually might have originally been a Manchester United fan when he was a kid, or a Portsmouth fan, and there's pictures of him at Old Trafford. But he's been at the academy since he was 8 years old. You know, he was always the guy. He was always mentioned more than say Reece James was when it was about someone being from Cobham. And so yeah, it's rough to take. I think, you know, he's a good signing for Manchester United. I think probably the fee in general, both clubs will be happy with. United in the end didn't go and pay over 60 million. Chelsea, for a guy with 1 year left on his contract who didn't want to be at the club really, got 60 or possibly 60 million, 55 million for him. So I think everybody's kind of happy. I mean, you as a United fan must be pretty good.
Yeah, do you know what though? I feel like there's a bit of a mixed reception from United fans. It does remind me, actually, we were speaking before camera, a little bit of the Aaron Ramsdale signing at Arsenal, where a lot of Arsenal fans, particularly online, were, you know, very sceptical. Actually, were sending quite a lot of hate to Aaron Ramsdale, weren't they? But then when he arrived at the stadium, I think it was immediately very clear it was a very different picture. I think that's probably going to be the case with Mason Mount as well. You know, there'll be a lot of chatty online trolls, but in the stadium, I think the normal fan that's actually human will be thinking this is a very smart bit of business by Manchester United, who are clearly looking to recruit an energetic sort of number 10 that can do a lot of defensive work to partner up with Bruno Fernandes. And Mason Mount fits the bill really well. I think if you'd have said 12 months ago that Man United had picked up Mason Mount for £55 million, people would be saying, what an amazing bit of business. Yes, he had a down year, but so did everybody at Chelsea. I think it's not entirely Mason Mount's fault that he had a down year. I think he has plenty of room to improve still in his career.
He had worse underlying numbers than a lot of people. You know, like Havertz is joining Arsenal with better underlying numbers than Mount, but I would say that still, regardless of that, I'd say that overall, you look at United paying 55 rising to 60 for Mount, and Arsenal paying 60 rising to 65 for Havertz, and I think United do look to have the better deal there. I mean, like, Mount is homegrown. I would say that Mount's level the season before is obviously higher than any level we've seen from Havertz in the Prem. They're the same age. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he's obviously not as flexible, and the question will be how that midfield kind of gels. Because Bruno and Mount, with an aging Casemiro behind them, is something that could be amazing, but also could fall apart quite quickly. But I don't know. I just think this is like a fantastic signing. Like I don't really see the complaints.
Everybody's leaving us, mate. Everybody's leaving us. It's going to be a very interesting Chelsea side next season. But let's continue with Mason Mount and United. Look, the deal is done, or it looks like to be done. But let's imagine it hadn't happened. I want a cheaper alternative. Somebody to fill that role, that midfield role. That, as Joe mentioned, they're going to be playing 2 10s to partner Bruno and Casemiro in midfield. Joe Tomlinson, start us off.
I really struggle with this as well. I think this is one of the hardest to find out there because midfielders generally don't come cheap that are of relative quality to a top 6 side. Like Alexis McAllister aside, who obviously had a clause written into his contract to allow him to leave for that fee, I think it's hard to find players.
But even then, that's being reported differently. So Havertz has been reported as 65 mil.
Yeah.
Mount is being reported as 55 plus 5. And McAllister is being reported as 35. But there's an extra 20 million in add-ons with McAllister. Like, these players are all meant to cost a similar amount.
Yeah.
Because
I didn't even know that.
Those are quite achievable, those add-ons. Like, so it's one of those things where, like, it kind of depends on how it's represented publicly as to how good a deal everyone thinks that you've got. But I agree with you. Like, I was looking at, like, Valverde and Barella and stuff, and I was like, oh, these guys are more expensive than Mount.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. So I've dipped into Liga. And again, I don't think it would be massively cheaper than Mount, but maybe a slightly different profile of player. I've gone for Caqueret at Lyon. Who have you gone for?
Caqueret.
Have you?
No, you haven't.
No way.
Have you both?
Look.
No way.
That's
Would
the
you
first
believe
time
it?
this
This
has
is maybe
ever
the
happened
first
on
time,
Sunday
yeah.
Vibes.
There's
Wow.
no conversation that's gone on between
Fair
me and
play.
Pat prior to this moment. We don't see who we've each picked. But yeah, I've gone for Caqueret. Obviously, Lyon are in financial difficulties themselves. Textor, their owner, has to, I think, raise 80 million euros by the end of July in order to
and he didn't want to sell
fund.
to, because Chelsea's Clear Lake Capital were looking to actually buy Lyon as part of their multi-club instead of going for Strasbourg. And in the end, he rejected it. He didn't want to sell to them.
Because the chat is he's either going to have to sell 2 or 3 sort of stars, or he's going to have to sell the Lyon women's team.
Yeah,
Which is obviously
hugely successful.
Hugely
Oh my
successful
God.
side, one of the most successful sides in women's football. So it's a bit
Turkey
of
there as
a
well.
sticky one. He's got to raise capital. I think Caqueret would be maybe 40, 45 million euros. I think if you're
that'd be a good
in
price.
that ballpark, I think that'd be a pretty good
Bruno
price
kind of price.
for him, yeah. But yeah, another fantastic season under his belt. Super versatile, can play in a number of different midfield roles. Great ball carrier, can create chances, but also has a massive defensive output. I think he would be a little bit more of a deep-lying player than you're going to see Mount play. I think Mount's probably going to be more of a 10, whereas you'd have Caqueret as more of a classic 8, and he's certainly more of a ball controller than Mount is. You know, Mount's very much going to want to play in transition, both on and off the ball.
Yeah.
But I think this would be an amazing move for Manchester United, and it would have been an amazing option had Mason Mount not signed that deal yesterday, as we sit here. But I want to hear your thoughts on Caqueret as well, because we've both gone for the same player, which is a bizarre situation.
But he's one of those guys, isn't he, where you look at, you know, those FBref things, and it's just green all the way down. I mean, like, and I think while he could potentially age into a 6.
How old is he at the moment?
He's 23.
Okay.
But he's got
Really
over
good age
100 top
profile.
flight appearances.
Really
You know,
good.
like he's pretty experienced
And he's
now.
uncapped by France yet as well.
Yeah, he's not capped yet. But like you say, one of the chief assets there, like along with Lukeba and Ryan Cherki.
Yeah.
But it just feels like this would be an interesting role for him because it would give him the freedom to use his ball carrying, which is so impressive. Like, he has historically been amazing at evading pressure. He's a phenomenal progressive passer. You know, so we're looking at about 6 final third entries, 6 progressive passes a game. This is like verging on elite levels. It's kind of Declan Rice kind of numbers. 4.5 tackles and interceptions a game. And last year, what was really interesting, and this is why I think he'd be an interesting Mount alternative, is suddenly his creativity just like went up. He jumped to 2 key passes a game last season from previously kind of the 1 level. So suddenly getting forward more. Interesting to see that he could do that too. Ended up with 4 goals and 7 assists in the league, so that's pretty promising. I don't know, I just think that he's the kind of guy that solves problems. If you have him in that midfield, he could play with any combination of the midfielders that United have, and he'd work perfectly well. If Casemiro gets injured, he plays as 6, and you could play maybe Fred in a shuttling role. If Casemiro is there, he could play alongside him. I don't think he can play as an out-and-out 10, but it's not like he's completely useless around the box. And Arsenal, you know, played Xhaka there last year. Is Caqueret worse on the ball than Xhaka? I don't think so.
And United have got Ericsson as well. On the bench,
I
who
forgot
can
about
also
that.
play
That's
in
a
that
really
10
good
role.
point.
Let's not
It's a
forget.
really good point. So he just feels like he's somebody who you sign this player knowing that you will get something out of him. and this might be a rare opportunity where Lyon can't do what they normally do and extract an absolute king's ransom for him. So take him.
Okay, so it's interesting. Obviously, United have already got Mason Mount. Do you think there's another club that could be suitable for him in the Premier League? Do you think that he has to move this summer?
Yeah, I think. I mean, Manchester City definitely would be a really good option, and would have been a very good option had they not signed Mateo Kovacic, I think, as a sort of Ilkay Gundogan replacement. Obviously, you look at Kovacic's numbers on paper, fantastic ball progressor, amazing under pressure, maybe slightly better in that respect than Kakare, but let's not forget Kovacic also not a goal scorer in the same way that Gundogan has been. I think he's got 4 goals in his last 8 seasons of professional football in league play. And you look at Kakare this season, like Pat said, massive improvement in that area. I think it was 4 goals, 7 assists, wasn't it? Playing slightly higher up, he'd be able to mix it in a midfield 8. He might be able to move into that more forward position as well. I think he would definitely work. They would have worked on the left-hand side of Arsenal as that position too.
Oh, Liverpool definitely.
Liverpool,
I mean,
for sure.
I mean, like they're looking at Hefren Thuram, they're looking at Gvardiol Kone. Like if Kakare is in that same price range, he doesn't have the physical size that maybe you'd like. He's about 5'8", 5'9". But really low center of gravity and can move away from pressure, so that's good. But I actually was originally looking at him here as maybe an alternative to Caicedo. I thought if you've got him alongside a guy like Enzo, who actually has surprisingly large defensive output for as good a passer as he is, I think Kakare alongside him, if you're playing a back 3 where you've got that kind of security behind him, would also be a really interesting. Again, a bit of a small midfield, but with a bunch of huge centre backs. And with Reece James as a wing back, maybe less of a concern.
I was tempted by Ray and Cherky. Has to be said.
United.
I was tempted, but obviously not as much of a midfielder. He can also float into those wide areas as well, can't he? But I just think the talent level with Cherky is so extraordinary that it's probably worth considering while Lyon are in such financial difficulties.
Well, he feels like he could be moving this summer, if not maybe January or within the next year. It feels like he'll be.
It's not going to be long, is it, before Cherky's at like a super club?
But I feel time down to Algeria, man.
But I feel like Lukeba looks like the guy who maybe might go. And I think maybe if they haven't had Lukeba for that long relative to Cherky and Kakare, and they're only just seeing the rewards of Cherky in particular. So I wonder if they were going to let one of them go, whether Lukeba would be the one that they let go.
Okay.
But we're both saying Kakare, which is bizarre.
That's
How
fair
many
enough.
of these
That's
are we going to have the
interesting.
same
That
name?
is
I
really
know. I mean, I'm actually intrigued because now you said Cherky as well. He'd be a really good alternative for quite a few people.
Yes. Now he's somebody that we'll be speaking about, I'm sure, for years to come. Let's move over to Liverpool because this week we saw the rumours that Liverpool are interested in RB Leipzig Szoboszlai for 70 million euros. I think that's about his release clause, but it has to be activated today or this week, but otherwise it goes up later. If you try to do it in July, if you activate
when you say
it
today,
now,
do you mean
by the end of June?
By the end of June.
So as in like it will have passed by the time.
Yes, by the time the video goes out. However,
you'll know if Szoboszlai's going to Liverpool.
Well, however, if you start conversations, you can then deal with it in July as well. From what I was reading, but it's really interesting. And then again, it comes back in place in January, I think.
So you have to meet the clause within June, and discussions can continue in July.
Yes. Okay. But if you don't, then I think in January it's about again. It's one of the more complicated ones for sure.
What was the price? Sorry,
70 million euros.
What do we think about that? Before we get into our alternatives, what do we think about Szoboszlai 70 million euros?
I think for Liverpool, it's really, really good. However, do you not feel like they've already got a lot of players that are going to play in that position? I kind of see him more as a winger now.
He's kind of a 10, isn't he?
He's been more of a 10 this season. When I was looking at his numbers for this, I was like, oh, Szoboszlai is like playing as a 10. I mean, I don't know. It feels like they've got McAllister in there. They've got Thiago in there.
Both can play in there.
I don't know. For 70 mil, like if I'm Liverpool, I don't know if I do it. If I'm Newcastle, maybe I do.
Yeah. I thought because he obviously was linked to Newcastle.
I was looking at Szoboszlai as if we were looking at Newcastle being interested in him, to be honest. Really? Because I think McAllister covers, especially last season where his attacking output went up. I feel like McAllister covers that kind of midfield to attack role. I think if Liverpool are going to go and get another midfielder this summer, it'll be much more of a deep, proper 8. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. I mean, who they have linked to as well with Kone and Thuram and such. Okay, then. However, we are talking about Szoboszlai and Liverpool. So I want to see who you'd rather go and buy instead. And that's completely up to you. Pat, over to you.
Okay, yeah. So obviously somebody cheaper than Szoboszlai. Okay. A guy I thought that might be interesting is Mohamed Kudus.
I also was very, very close to putting this down.
Linked with Brighton, always a strong sign of quality. Reported fee of about 35 mil. So we're looking 25 to 35 mil less than Szoboszlai. Obviously, a bit less proven in that he's playing in a weaker league. But I would say that at this point in time, the Bundesliga doesn't necessarily offer a greater chance of translation to the Prem than the Eredivisie. Not particularly. 22 years old, Ghanaian. 14 goal involvements for Ajax in the league last year, and more impressively, 7 in 6 in the Champions League. And let's not forget, actually, Ajax were not the dominant force in the Eredivisie last year that they have been historically, where, you know, Tadic is putting up like 35 goal involvements. They came third in the league. They had one of their worst points tallies in years. They've sacked 2 managers since Ten Hag left, so they're in a little bit of trouble. Now they've taken a bit of a risk on a guy coming out of Sparta Rotterdam as their coach. So they're kind of in transition, but Kudus was really impressive all year long. And like Szoboszlai, he's got that positional versatility. Now, I would say Szoboszlai is an attacking mid who can play wide a bit.
Okay.
And I would say Kudus is a wide player who can play as an attacking mid. But we saw him linked with Arsenal as well, you know, where people were talking about him for that advanced 8 position. Interesting. Interesting. But his numbers are pretty spectacular. Now, pass volume, not at the Szoboszlai level, it's kind of 30-odd passes a game instead of 55, so that shows you the difference in roles, and so does the dribbling. He's completing 4.6 dribbles a game.
Fun player.
At like a 66% success rate.
Wow.
Now, that I think is really important, because when you see a guy who's dribbling at just an acceptable level, you assume they're going to come to the Prem and it's going to be trouble. That's kind of the situation with Mudryk. So the fact that he's so exceptional in the Eredivisie gives me hope that even if his dribbling got way worse in the Prem against better defenders, he'd still be useful enough. Insane 0.73 XG per 90, way above Szoboszlai's 0.48. So again, with league differences, maybe that gives you a little bit of security there. Big shot numbers, 3.5 a game, 1.5 key passes, a little bit low. But, you know, defensive actions as well, all solid. Like, basically, I look down his list and I think this is all really solid. He can perform a bunch of attacking roles. I think that if you got him for a team like Newcastle, I can play him as an attacking mid, but I can also play him as a proper winger. And it's not going to be like Szoboszlai, you know, doing a job on the wing. It's going to be like, this guy's as good a dribbler as Alain Saint-Maximin. You know, that's how he profiles right now. So if you could play him as a proper winger, but much more ball secure, over 80% pass accuracy for a winger is like, it's almost unheard of. It's bananas. And that's a really good sign of a player who can make the step up to a higher level. So I look at all his numbers and I think, okay, he's coming out of the Eredivisie, but I don't think he costs that much. And there are no red flags in his numbers at all, in my opinion.
What is don't cost that much? What is the number we're thinking?
35 million euros, I think. 30, 35 million euros. I don't think that's that bad.
Okay, I like Kudus a lot. I really do. I don't necessarily think he's the best Liverpool fit.
Yeah.
Just because
for Liverpool,
also,
maybe not,
I think for Newcastle, I agree, would be an amazing fit. I think the Brighton move is absolutely sensational. But I think for Liverpool, with the kind of the amount of wide talent they've kind of got on the books as well at the moment.
Just sent Carvalho from loan as well.
Exactly. I think for me, I've gone for Gabri Veiga.
Okay. I like Gabri Veiga.
Who obviously counts technically for this budget option because of that 40 million euro release clause. Doesn't have the popping numbers that Kudus does in terms of like freakish levels of dribbling, but has had a total breakout season with Celta Vigo, like to a level where you are seeing interest this week from Manchester City, previously already linked to Liverpool, Newcastle as well. I think it's very likely he will leave for that 40 million euro release clause to one of Europe's elite clubs, be it in England or maybe in Italy. We're talking about a player who is a bit of a shot monster from midfield. He is going to shoot an awful lot from outside the box. His non-penalty expected goals are through the roof for a midfield operator. But he's also, a really good player on the ball. His take-ons, very, very successful with them. He carries the ball really nicely through the midfield. He's very Spanish in the way he plays, like very technical on the ball. And I think for 40 million euros would slot in nicely to that Liverpool midfield. If you had two Liverpool midfield operators in forward areas like McAllister and Gabri Veiga, and then maybe you had Fabinho operating deeper against some of the smaller sides when you could pin them in, I think he would really, really go to work on teams, especially if Hakpo could come and operate in little holes and Salah was inverting. I think you would cause teams big troubles down the bottom end of the table.
Isn't he
just
6
with
foot
their
tall
quality.
as well?
He's not small. I think he's 5'11", 5'11", 6 foot. So he's not like a 5'8" Spaniard. He's going to come into the league and should be able to physically handle himself, even though he's very young. He's still quite slight.
To work under Jurgen Klopp as well, he can still be developed into kind of whatever he wanted him to be, especially going forward.
I just think that idea of, especially with Trent inverting, you can probably get away with slightly more attacking midfielder like a Szoboszlai in that team. And I think Gabri Veiga isn't going to operate as wide, but is going to be more of a classic 10, can profile as an 8 as well because of his ball carrying ability. Had a great season at Celta Vigo, and I just think that clause is too good not to take a risk on.
Yeah, it does feel like somebody's going to take that risk for sure. I think I'm going to have to go with Gabby on this one. I think for your shout, Pat, if we were doing Newcastle, you would win it. I
agree.
Because it is that midfield, that attacking kind of midfield role. I mean, it still never feels like they really ever replaced Wijnaldum when he left as well, and that's kind of seen them have downturns in that midfield position. But yeah, no, he is a super interesting player. I've watched a couple of his highlights as well, and he definitely does like a shot from outside the box, that is for sure. Okay, let's go to West London, my beloved Chelsea, where every single player looks like they are leaving. There is no midfielders basically at the moment. And the guy we want to talk about is Caicedo. Now, again, possibly by the time this video goes out, it could be announced next week. It seems like it could be announced as well. Who knows? Maybe it falls through at the last hurdle as well. There were rumours that Man United were getting involved, but that supposedly was just to put Chelsea under pressure for Mason Mount. Is that DM role? I think it's good that Chelsea have analysed that they want to partner Enzo Fernandez with a DM so he can go further forward and actually have to do less of that defensive work that we spoke about earlier to get the best out of him. So I want to hear your cheap options. Joe, you first, please.
Before we get into it, what do you think about Caicedo to Chelsea? Is that I just think that's perfection.
It seems as well that the fee's around 70 to 80 million, which is better than the
it's an amazing
100.
move for Chelsea.
And if they can keep Levi Colwill as well, because I really do think that's what's going to happen, then I think it's mega.
It's an amazing move for Chelsea. I'm a little bit surprised that, well, I suppose he doesn't have an awful lot of other options on the table. I suppose he hasn't really picked Chelsea, has he? It's Arsenal aren't in the picture anymore. They've obviously gone for Rice. They're not going to spend another 100 million on a DM. United have gone for Mount. Liverpool have gone elsewhere. It doesn't feel like there's much competition for Chelsea for his signature. And I think it's one of the moves of the summer at £80 million. I think he is just amazing.
It'll be interesting to see as well what Poch does with him, because if we're still playing 4 at the back, he'll be able to fill in for Reece James whenever he bombs forward and all that kind of it fits in really well, and hopefully it's a midfield partnership that we could see for 8 years or so, and will hopefully develop to be hugely successful. But I don't want to talk about him. I want to hear your suggestions. Joe, who have you got?
I've gone for Edson Alvarez. The Ajax defensive midfielder, who's of course his deal with Borussia Dortmund collapsed on Thursday. Terzic pulled the plug by all accounts on that one. Decided he wanted to keep Emre Can as his defensive midfielder next season. That deal was apparently agreed at 35 million euros, I think, or 38 million euros. So that's probably the fee we're looking at. Maybe a bit of Premier League money on top of that. So you might be looking at 40 to 45.
He was previously linked to Chelsea, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, I think he was previously very close to joining Chelsea. Actually, last summer, of course, when Todd Burley was splashing cash like it was running out of fashion, he was very close to joining Chelsea. And we are talking about a defensive midfielder whose all-round game is absolutely superb. He's a good age at 25. He's exceptional on the ball. He's slightly more of a sort of Rodri type, in my opinion, than an out-and-out defensive destroyer. He's going to get on the ball an awful lot. He's averaging upwards of 90 passes a game, at about a 90% pass accuracy. Huge progressive pass numbers. I think up about 8-9 a game. He's going to get on the ball an awful lot and try and dictate the tempo. But he also has that combative, wants to get in your face, can operate as a centre-back, worst comes to the worst. He's tall, he's got the physicality to carry it in the Prem. I think he's proven he can operate at Champions League level now for a number of years. I think he's ready for a move. I think that if West Ham get him at that 45 million euro fee, it's an amazing move for West Ham as the replacement for Declan Rice. I really think it would be one of the signings of the summer if they managed to get him for that fee. He can also contribute in the opposition penalty area because of his size, because of his stature. He's really a threat from set pieces. For me, this would be a great signing. If you need a budget defensive midfielder, Ajax are clearly willing to do deals at a cheaper price point than they were last summer, as we've seen with Jurrien Timber, who's going to be joining Arsenal for 35 million. Amazing bit of business for Arsenal, for one of the best centre-back full-backs at that age in the world. So I think they'd probably be willing to deal for Edson Alvarez, as Borussia Dortmund have shown, at a very similar price point. And Chelsea wanted him last season. So clearly there's an alignment somewhere at the top level of your structure.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I like it. Yeah, and there's a reason why we were after him last season for sure. Patrice?
I'm looking at Ezequiel Palacios out of Bayer Leverkusen. Now, obviously, his career at Leverkusen has been a bit stop-start because of injuries, but last year was like a proper regular and playing as a deep midfielder for Xabi Alonso. I mean, I consider that to be a pretty high recommendation. He's not quite 25 yet. He turns 25 later this year, so about the same age as Alvarez. And if you look at him statistically, profiles is really, really similar to Caicedo. So massive defensive performance. He's in the top 3% of midfielders for tackles, the top 6% for interceptions. So he's just crushing it defensively. And actually, he's comfortable dropping deep and helping out the back line too. He's way better than Caicedo for clearance numbers, for block numbers. So this is a guy who's comfortable getting into the box and doing last-ditch defending too. His passing numbers are identical to Caicedo. 5 final third entries, 6 progressive passes a game. Really, really, really solid. So exactly what you'd expect to see from a sort of regista under Xabi Alonso. I think also he's got 25 caps for Argentina. So he and Enzo know each other. He and Enzo, like, I couldn't really find data on how much they play together, but certainly they've been in the same squad. They'll have trained together. Plus, and this goes for Alvarez as well, I suppose, when he's coming to the Premier League, he'll have a Spanish-speaking manager. You know, like those sorts of things do really help you bet in.
Definitely.
But if he were to have Enzo there as well, then I think that would be kind of helpful. I suspect with Leverkusen, they'd be more willing to let him go than they would to let, say, Diaby go or Frimpong. And I think, therefore, you can probably get him for a reasonable fee if they think, right, well, this, you know, saves us for another year from having to sell one of our stars. So maybe 30 to 40 mil. And I think that's kind of a reasonable price for him. I mean, obviously, fitness is a factor, but he was completely fine this last year. And when he's got on the pitch, his whole career, he's always been exceptional. So he just looks like a guy who, if you have a plan for Caicedo and you can't get Caicedo, this guy is plug and play. They do exactly the same thing.
Yeah, okay. I mean, this position is so key for Chelsea to get right. If they didn't get Caicedo, obviously losing the likes of N'Golo Kante, who this kind of it's been on the books for the past few years now with his injury concerns. They need to get it right. And so, I quite like the Palacios relationship that they already have.
Yes.
So I'm going to go Palacios.
Yeah,
but I do kind of feel like both would work fantastically well. I think you'd be happy with either or. And if
West Ham are buzzing right now.
And
West Ham because Edson Alvarez, they are buzzing.
Either one of these is
they're going to get him anyway. Realistically, like Chelsea look like they're going for all Caicedo. So realistically, it looks like that Edson Alvarez.
But
will
either
be
one of these
to
is
East
good
London.
because, like, Chelsea, like every scan you do of Chelsea comes up like negative for having that dog in them. So like they do actually need somebody. They genuinely do need some people in midfield who seem like they give a fuck. Like, I mean, Enzo at least does, and Enzo played. I thought he was amazing.
Connor definitely does.
But you'd really care if you played for Chelsea, but you would also not be effective. And that is kind of my feeling about Conor Gallagher.
Wow.
I just don't think there's a home for him in that. I think
he's also a perfectly fine squad player.
Poch will probably like him because Poch got value over the years out of quite limited guys like Wanyama, for instance, and even like Bentaleb. So I mean, like, maybe.
Okay. We're going with Palacios though. I'm sorry to say, Joe, and Edson Alvarez can head over to West Ham. Well, we mentioned Poch at Spurs. Let's talk about Harry Kane then.
So hard.
The next boring saga of the summer.
Exactly. Now, actually, interestingly, it seems like personal terms were supposedly agreed between Bayern Munich and Harry Kane.
Harry Kane's representatives.
Yeah, between Harry Kane's representatives. That is definitely how we put it, and brother.
But his dad. But now his dad's been drafted in, which I do think is kind of funny. That like his brother's always been his agent, but then this one they said it was brokered by his brother and his dad, and it's like, imagine them being like, you're not doing a good job. We need to get your dad involved. Like, that's such a burn.
That is really poor. However, look, we need some alternatives to Harry Kane, and it's not easy to do because the guy is arguably one of the best strikers in the entire world. What this does mean, though, is you have a little bit more budget because obviously 80 million euros was submitted by Bayern Munich. I think the first one was around 60, wasn't it? Now it's up to 80.
Is it? The second bid's in?
Yes, the second bid was supposedly in. I think obviously Spurs look like they're going to reject it. They want 100.
They're not going to sell. Even 100,
which is crazy
they absolutely
considering
should sell,
that they get him out of the Premier League. He doesn't go to the rival in the Premier League.
I can't believe they're not going to sell.
Nuts.
And now that he's agreed terms, we were talking about this off camera, but it's been pointed out that their whole theory was, well, maybe if we don't sell him, we can get him to sign a new deal. But if he's agreed terms, then it seems pretty obvious that he'll just sign a pre-agreement and go like in January.
Yeah.
So this is Spurs' opportunity to get between 80 and 100 million euros and get him out of the Prem, like you say. Like you're never going to have to worry about it.
The upside is not enough to keep him. If they keep him, it does not swing them to Premier League title challenges or that level, which is what a €100 million one player swing should really be doing. Like Arsenal's 100 million swing on Declan Rice takes them to title challenge, like to win that title.
And the thing is,
this takes them maybe from 8th to 6th, 5th, 4th territory.
And the thing that's really interesting as well, it was kind of the same with Mason Mount, which is why it's good you got it done so early. Is a lot of the players, I think Harry Kane probably have another week or two off because of before pre-season, but get them before they start pre-season. The second they start pre-season, it makes it 10 times tougher when he's off in. I think they're in Asia, Spurs, trying to deal with that kind of transfer as well. I'm not exactly too sure about it, but okay, look. Harry Kane, fantastic player, one of the best in the world, of course. How are we going to get a cheaper alternative for Bayern Munich, Pat?
Yeah. Like that. The first words I wrote here were, this is basically impossible. Players who can do some of the similar stuff. I do like Ollie Watkins, but I do just think Villa are in this mode where they're like, no, we're spending a bunch of money, we're really ambitious. I think they'll ask for the moon. Like
they will.
You just can't do it.
Do you just have to pick them rather than picking someone that has little bits of all of Harry Kane stuff? You just pick someone that's got one really similar bit of Harry Kane stuff.
It don't exist though. This is the issue that Man United got with this striking market. The market is it's not even thin, it's non-existent. The market is so lopsided. It's either 19, 20, 21 year olds that you're still being asked the moon for 80 million for, or it's Victor Osimhen who are being asked to pay 160 million. It's not going to happen. So the striking market doesn't exist. So like clearly what United have felt here is there is nobody out there that they can pay 100 million for. So it's better to go, we'll get Mount, we'll get Onana, and then we'll get a youngster, than it is to go, we're going to pay 130 million on somebody that isn't necessarily the perfect option.
Yeah.
And I think Bayern Munich are probably going to end up doing that as well. Like I've gone for Jonathan David, who I don't think is the perfect option for Bayern Munich, but would allow them, say next season, Harry Kane did become available on a free, could still operate maybe alongside Harry Kane. We've seen him operate in a 2 at times for Lille. He can operate wide, but he's young enough that wouldn't come in and demand to be the guy, the number 9 at Bayern Munich. I think Lille would probably accept a fee of in the region of 50 million. He's coming off the back of his best ever season, 24 goals in Liga, consistently getting better and better every single year. He's decent in build-up play, very good with his back to goal and bringing other players in. He's quite creative, so you'd think, let's say Kane did arrive at Bayern in January or next season for free, he could potentially play off him, with a winger, as a winger. I think that a player like Jonathan David is slightly going under the radar this summer just because he's not that fashionable. And I don't know, I don't want to say it's because he's Canadian, but I feel like if he was French or Spanish and banged in 24 Ligue 1 goals the season before, I think it was about 20 as well. He's 23, profiles really well as an all-rounder. If he was Spanish or French doing that, I think people would be talking about him a little bit more than they are just because he's Canadian. I don't know whether that's just.
Or if he was paying for like a lower reaches of the Prem, team. I think like out of France, it's kind of like there's a number of teams who are willing to take a risk, to make a marquee signing from France, whereas everybody else kind of sees France usually as, oh, we will go and get some squad pieces from there with upside, but we're not going to like make our our standout.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the advantage Bayern have is their attack is going to be good enough regardless to compete for the title.
Yeah.
Like, they can work something out with Mane, Sané, Gnabry, Coman, Musiala, Tel, Müller. Like, they've got so many options that they can have a functional attack, and I think it'll be fine. And Gnabry playing up front for them last year was pretty good. Like, but I kind of think if you can't get the dream guy, you could, on the one hand, go and get somebody like Ivan Toney and say, well, we'll be fine for half the season without him, and then he gives us a different weapon back half of the year. Huge goal scoring record. He's also really, really good link-up player. So that would be an interesting option for them just to have in the latter half of the season. And I kind of think he'd be interesting to see in the Champions League. The other guy, I think, is just like, go and take Balogun. Like, if you can't get a guy who's, 27, 28 and is one of the best strikers in the world, just go and get one of the best young strikers. And, like, maybe they work out for you, maybe they don't. Like, if you go and get Balogun, price is apparently 35 mil. If you go and get him for 35 mil and he doesn't work out for you, or he doesn't work out at Bayern level, pretty certain you can sell him to another team for 25
especially in
to 30.
Liga. Yeah, I agree.
I think it'd be fine. And his numbers are phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like double the... He got double the number of goals that Choupo-Moting got. Choupo-Moting was playing for Bayern. Balogun was playing for Reims. Like, I mean, his numbers are off the charts. His shot numbers are off the charts. His XG's off the charts. He's obviously, kind of got like some of the Arteta seal of approval. So, like, as in, even if it's only in training, he's being trained in a particular style that you expect Bayern are going to want to kind of play. So I just think if it doesn't work out, it's pretty low stakes for you. And at least then you're doing something. And there's a chance he's amazing.
I also think another option is Füllkrug. Like,
Sure, yeah.
I do think
It's kind of is in the Tony realm.
Yeah, I do think it's an option for Bayern. Like, he's not the perfect candidate, but proven goal scoring record in the Bundesliga. Was it second top scorer last season? Wasn't, I think, 16 goals. German international now, and we saw how effective he could be in that Germany shirt. I think that's very Bayern Munich. Like, the fact that he is kind of burgeoning on being one of the best strikers, out and out number 9s in the Bundesliga. They probably could convince him to join the club at a fairly cut price fee. It's not going to be like Werder Bremen are holding out for like 70 million. It's the sort of thing where that deal ends up getting done cheap as chips and everybody goes, oh God, like it's another Bayern Munich signing, isn't it? Yeah. So I think realistically, I could actually see by the end of the summer Füllkrug being a Bayern Munich player.
That's what they did with Gomez, what they did with Mandzukic. Like they have had a lot of success doing it, but it just feels like all these guys, Füllkrug, Balogun, like Tony, they get lots of shots, they get high XG, they get loads of touches in the box, they're really good at receiving the ball. If you've got all those things, then you're just going to score goals.
So for all my picks, who are your suggestions there?
Balogun.
Balogun for you.
Balogun.
Joe?
I'm going to say, I'm torn between Jonathan David and Füllkrug. I'm going to go Füllkrug.
It's much more plausible.
How old is he, Joe?
He's 30.
30. Okay.
And Balogun is not 22 until next week.
I think it's going to be Balogun. I think it's going to have to be Balogun. And realistically, like fee-wise...
You just get your money back, though, if he doesn't...
Fee-wise, it's probably, maybe an extra 10 million for Balogun?
Tel joined at 16.
Yeah.
He's 5 years older than Tel and had 21 goals in Ligue 1 last year.
I think Tel they may end up just using anyway. All right, then let's head over to the treble winners, Manchester City. They've been linked to Gvardiol. 100 mil is the fee being spoken about. So you got a big bit of budget here to work with to go under. Obviously, Gvardiol can slot in at centre back. Laporte is going to be leaving. Left-footed can also fit in at left back as well for them next season, because we know how Pep has enjoyed playing his centre backs there. It's going to be interesting, considering he's also a very young profile centre back who could be at the club for 8 years or so. Could be one of the world's best ones within the next 2 years, that's for sure. So, Patrice, who is your suggestion as an alternative to Gvardiol?
I wouldn't say it's really a cheaper option.
It's all right. Well, 100 million.
But my attitude is Leipzig are trying to gouge them a bit. Like Leipzig, they've offered an insane fee, and Leipzig have said no because they really want him to be, well, he is going to be the most expensive defender of all time, but they want it to be like ludicrous. They want verging on Rice money. And I get it. I mean, like, he's 21, he's phenomenal. It makes a lot of sense. But I think if they're going to really play hardball, why not just go to Dortmund, who you have a relationship with? You bought a lot of players from Dortmund, and say, if they won't take this amount for Gvardiol, would you take it for Schlotterbeck? Because Schlotterbeck is
coming off the back of a bad season, though.
It's not a bad season. I mean, like, it really isn't. I think he's had an underrated season, and actually, in pretty much every regard, statistically, he's been better than Gvardiol last year. He's also bigger than Gvardiol.
He's massive.
Gvardiol's just
so
over
big.
6 foot. Schlotterbeck is 6'3". He's heavier than Gvardiol as well. He's a couple of years older. He's 23. But what does Pep centre backs do? Well, they need to be really good passers. They need to be good ball carriers, not dribblers, but ball carriers. And you want them in the rare situations that they're kind of in a one-on-one to be able to win those tackles. Now, Schlotterbeck, still in the top 7% of centre-backs for passes completed per game, completes more progressive passes than Gvardiol, 6 to 4.5. More progressive carries, 1.6 to 1, which is kind of the difference between being in the top quarter of centre-backs and in the top 10% of centre-backs. In fact, he's in the top 4%, and that's the kind of thing that Laporte has always done. And when you look at Gvardiol in the tackle, Schlotterbeck makes more defensive actions, a lot more. But Gvardiol's success in the tackle last year was bad. Like, actually bad. 40% success in the tackles he attempted. Now, I'm not saying he's a bad defender. He'll develop. He's very young. He'll play in a completely different style. Pep will work with him on it. But Schlotterbeck completes 70% of the tackles he attempts, which is elite and is what we see from City defenders.
Okay.
So if there's a red... it's not even really a red flag, but if there's like a sort of mustard-coloured flag, like in Gvardiol's numbers, it's that how is he going to be in the one-on-one? He's great on the ball, but can he actually do the last-ditch defending that we've seen Diaz do, that we've seen Laporte do? So I really like that. More ball recoveries too, greater aerial success, because Gvardiol's aerial success as well, like 56%, that's not very good.
He's not the tallest bloke, is he?
Well, it's just, that's not good, and that's in the Bundesliga. So he's going to come to the Prem, and suddenly he is going to be up against guys like Tony, like Watkins, big guys who are going to make life extremely uncomfortable and annoying for him. So he's going to cost a fortune, but City do have this good relationship with Dortmund. Maybe because the perception among some people is that Schlotterbeck hasn't had a great season. If you're offering a fee that's among the record fees ever for a defender, I'm sure a lot of their fans would be like, well, we have to take it. And I do think that City would get a phenomenal player, whereas Leipzig are really, really, really playing hardball. And I just think after a while, even if you know the player's really good, it's annoying to feel like somebody's trying to have you over a barrel.
City
like, that would piss
also,
me off if I was City.
How many times has City gone, we know our price will pay, we won't go above it, and we'll go find another player? We've seen it a million times. Kukureya, we saw it with Ronaldo as well at one point. A million other players where they've just gone, you know what, we're not going to pay that, somebody else can pay that, and we'll see how it works out. Fred, for United. Joe?
I had 3 options when it came down to this.
Whoa.
Okay.
And unfortunately, 2 of them seem to have joined other clubs. So, Pau Torres, I think, would have been a fantastic option for them, but has gone to Villa for 35 million, which I think is
very
blockbuster
good
fee for them, given he's still only 26.
It's a good signing, man.
I think Lucas Hernandez would have been a good option for Manchester City as well, in that sort of hybrid centre-back role. But I was reading this morning that, you know, they're targeting more like very, very functional centre-backs. You know, not really looking for full-backs. They're looking for centre-backs that can play potentially as a full-back, a little bit in the maybe in the mould of a Nathan Ake type. The issue I found was finding left-footers. Like, because obviously, clearly that's what he's trying to do with Gvardiol, isn't it? Losing Laporte potentially, but I kind of give up. I think a really good option for Man City would be Jules Koundé, who appears to potentially be one of the names that Barcelona might semi-think about letting go this summer if the correct offer arrives. Didn't really find a home last season under Xavi. Ended up becoming kind of a right-back more than anything else at Barcelona. We know, again, they need to raise capital for the club. There's talk of Frenkie de Jong leaving, isn't there? I can't see that happening. I think last season was spectacularly good for Barcelona. And with Busquets out the door, surely he's going to be given the air to Busquets, even though he's not the perfect replacement. It would kind of indicate a different style of play to a level. I think Jules Koundé is a sellable asset there. And I think that Manchester City would be an amazing destination for a player who's proven for an entire season he can operate as a centre-back to an extremely high level. He can also operate as a hybrid full-back if he needs to. He's super mobile, exceptional on the ball, can move into midfield areas, as we've seen consistently throughout his playing time. I think he would be an amazing signing for Manchester City, but I think it would be slightly more costly than like a couple of others. Might be talking in the realms of like 50, 60.
How much is Barca getting for?
I think if they got I think they got him for about 50, 60. I think if they got the money back on Jules Koundé, they would probably be pretty happy with that.
Well, it was interesting because the sporting director came out and he was like, "Oh yeah, these bunch of youngsters," which was like Christensen, Arejo, Ansu Fati, Pedri, and there might have been one more, but he didn't mention Koundé. He was like, "These are the future of the club."
Yeah, because I mean, if you think of the defensive options, like Eric Garcia is clearly preferred by Chaffee to Jules Koundé as a central defensive option. Ronald Araujo, who's also operated at fullback at times. Andreas Christensen, probably the best of the lot, really. I think that Jules Koundé, obviously Ronald Araujo is the best centre-back at the club, but best of the rest, Andreas Christensen probably. So Koundé might even be fourth choice at Barcelona. Barcelona that need to sell players.
And if we're being realistic, like Man City, like Ake was really good still at in that position. Like you don't necessarily think he would go straight into left back straight away. I think the interesting thing is
he would be almost more of a Walker replacement if Walker was to go to Barcelona to Bayern Munich.
Well, we've seen Akanji play on the left.
Exactly. I don't think the footedness necessarily matters because they tuck so tight and they progress into midfield. It's not like they're overlapping and whipping crosses in with their left foot.
And for a fee of 60 million, like I think it's a lot. I think that's a lot easier to stomach than what we could end up paying for others. Slotterbeck.
Barcelona fans absolutely ruining me in the comments right now, saying that he's not leaving.
You also need they might need to do other things. You know, like Gundogan gone. Okay, they've got Kovacic in, but you'd expect Foden's going to have to pay over De Bruyne at stages. I do think they probably need a winger. Or I think they need another.
Been linked to Saudi as well, hasn't he?
I think they need another attacker. So if I were them, I'd kind of think, well, if we can get Koundé for, say, 50 mil instead of 100 mil on Gvardiol, let's just do it and spend that money elsewhere.
He's so highly rated, Koundé, as well. He's really so highly rated.
I'm going to go with Koundé. I do like the choice of Slotterbeck as well, but Koundé is who I will pick in this case. Well, you mentioned him a minute ago, Hernandez. His deal to PSG looks like it's going to be happening, but again, at the time, it wasn't. So we want to talk about some possible replacements or alternatives that PSG could have aimed for. It's another centre-back that kind of covers that same role. A little bit Gvardiol-ish, I guess. Who have we suggested here?
I, again, struggled with this. I don't know whether they were trying to identify a left-footer there. I think there's very, very few left-footed central defensive options on the market.
They're also aiming for French players as well, aren't they? They're trying to make they're quite French.
They're definitely trying to make it a more French-centric team. And obviously, last year operated quite substantially with a 3 at the back system. Maybe that was to cover Sergio Ramos's dying legs. I'm not too sure, but it feels like maybe they'll stick with that. Hard to tell until Luis Enrique's in the building what formation they're going to go with. I think Axel Disasi would be a really good option for them. The Monaco central defender who's reportedly got a price tag of between 35 and 40 million euros. Manchester United are very interested in him. I think 25 years old. He offers a nice sort of blend of youth, but also has lots of minutes in Ligue 1 play. Really, really good on the ball. Really good on the ball. Just very, very calm and composed. He is huge as well. Like, huge. He's 6'4", and he carries 6'4" in a big way. Like, he's bulky bloke. So he's not the most athletic across the ground. He's a little bit slow, but just so good on the ball that I feel like PSG's dominance of possession in league play sort of wouldn't have a big effect. The fact that he is a bit more cumbersome, he could just go out there and dominate the ball, dominate space, and shift it into better players. I think he would be a really good option for PSG. French as well, so kind of fits into that quota, doesn't it? That they're trying to bring up a little bit. I think it would be a smart buy, and it would also weaken Monaco. So for me, I think Disasi is a decent shout.
Disasi, okay. Patrice?
Well, I think Lukeba is a guy they can be interested in, but we talked about him last week, and it'd be hard to extract him from Lyon. I think having French players is good, but I think they can bring those through the academy, and I think it's more important that they have young players who grow together and become stars of the side. So like Marquinhos and Verratti are not French, but they joined. Marquinhos joined at 19 and has just been a star for them for 10 years. So I think that they can target young guys who are going to go on to become kind of like legends of the club. So a guy I thought would be interesting for them is Levi Colwill. Now, Chelsea don't want to sell him, but they didn't want to sell him to Brighton at 30 mil. Would they sell him to PSG at 50? I think maybe they would. And I think that if PSG said, you're going to be a guaranteed starter for us as a left centre-back, I think he'd want to go.
Get paid huge money.
And also, he's up against Badiashile for that point. at Chelsea, who has looked excellent and is 22. If PSG come calling and they're like, you are going to be a starter for us, we're going to pay you a fortune, you're going to play for us, you're going to win titles. I don't know. I'd be tempted to do that. He's obviously played in the possession side, top 1% for passes completed in his position, top 8% for progressive passes. Really good at running forward with the ball as well. Rarely makes mistakes, rarely gets dispossessed, rarely fouls. Phenomenal aerial presence. Like 71% aerial success rate is absolutely bananas for a guy that young. But I just look at him and I think he's going to slot into our style. He's going to play good football. He's left-footed. He can grow with the team. It's the kind of thing that makes a lot of sense because, yeah, like Marquinhos, if you nail this signing, and I do feel like Colwill is as close as you can get to a can't-miss centre-back signing, then go and do it. And I think you'd probably get him for the same or a little bit less as you're going to pay for Lucas Hernandez. Lucas Hernandez got a horrible injury record. Yeah, he could play as like an actual kind of left-back, I guess, but I don't really think it's worth it. And he's 27,
and
28 now.
They've got Nunes there, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly. So I'd look at Colwill and I'd be like, that guy is reliable. He's going to be a good defender for us, and in 10 years' time, he might still be a good defender.
He could be captain material as well. Like,
yeah.
You know what? If I take out all my bias, I've got to go with Levi Colwill, realistically. Like, if you can get him, he's just going to sort you out for 10 years.
Big ifs.
Actually, and also, if you can get him, however, in this made-up scenario, we say we will. Something's happened in the cricket by the looks of it because Joe was staring off.
Stokes out first ball, wasn't it?
Brilliant. Okay, we're going to go to Real Madrid. Huge money to spend here.
This is horrible.
This is impossible, this one.
Kylian Mbappé. Now, Madrid need a striker. They've currently got Newcastle of fame from Newcastle, Joselu, up top. They've lost Benzema. They've lost Mariano Diaz. They need someone to score goals. I don't think Joselu is going to be that guy, quite frankly. Who are they going to get as an alternative to Kylian Mbappé?
Go and pay the money and get Kane.
Is your suggestion Harry Kane?
No, because it's not a budget alternative. I don't think there's a budget alternative striker on the market. I don't think they exist. That's why we struggled so much with Bayern Munich. We ended up going down the full crew route, like Real Madrid have gone down the Joselu route. They don't exist. That's why Man United have not been able to sign a striker. That's why Madrid have got Joselu. Like, these players on the market are not there right now. They are myths. So I think they should be focusing on slightly different positions. Maybe a sort of 10 come winger that can drift in and around the pitch.
Because they're going to go back from Mbappé.
Exactly.
Like, if they don't sign Mbappé, you've got to assume Mbappé is going to arrive.
Yeah.
Like, so it's got to be a player who can play striker for a year and then not.
Yeah, I haven't even identified a player who can do that, to be honest with you. I've gone for Arda Güler, the Fenerbahce number 10 come winger, who is still, I think, only 18 years old, but is this week in talks with Barcelona, of course, close to joining them. Massively talented, but has a 17 million euro release clause. I think the fact that Barcelona wants him, if you're Real Madrid, just beat them to it. Do you know what I mean? Just go out there and try and beat Barcelona to it. It's not going to be easily done, but he would offer you cover and explosive levels of talent in the 10, and on both wings to cover Vinicius and Rodrigo if needs be. He's not a striker, I'm fully aware of that, and clearly they've got a jam-packed midfield roster following the arrival of Jude Bellingham as well, who could also kind of play in that attacking role a little bit, and Fede Valverde can also do a similar sort of job. But Güler's a very different type of player. He's that low centre of gravity, messy type, very dribbly, huge take on numbers. You know, for an 18-year-old, is that clear, like, exceptional generational talent. So he's going to go to Barcelona if you don't do it. So maybe just take a punt at 17 million euros. It's nothing to Real Madrid in this market. If it doesn't work, you can ship into Valencia or Sevilla or some other dross in Spain. Like, it's no biggie for them. I think that trying to sign alternatives to Mbappe or to Kane, it don't exist on the market, I'm afraid.
Okay.
Unless you've managed to pull something your arse.
No.
I mean, did you have a name in terms of anybody else?
Yeah, I've got some names, sure. I mean, there are things that you can look at that I think, you know, like, if he hadn't signed a new deal, you would go to Arsenal and you'd say, like, how much do you want for Martinelli? Like, that's quite an interesting guy for them, I think.
Gabby Jesus?
Son a couple of years ago.
I was thinking Rashford.
Would have made a lot of sense.
Rashford in his last year of his contract, still not signed one.
Yeah, but the only problem is, I think, like, when Vinicius and Rashford are both fit, Rashford just doesn't play.
Yeah, and he's not as good as Mbappe, so...
Yeah, that just sucks. But, like... So I was like, maybe Gnabry. rumour is that Bayern are willing to sell one of their wingers. He's paid as a striker. It also means that if Endrick comes in and he's great, or if they sign Mbappé next year and play him as a forward, Gnabry isn't going to be useless. Like, they haven't had a serious injury to Vinicius, but one is going to happen at some point, probably. He gets hacked down every game. They've also actually used Rodrigo kind of in a centre-forward role, and Gnabry, in my mind, is much better suited to that. He's much more of a physical presence. Even though he's small, he's extremely broad, and again, we've seen him do it to a pretty high level. You know, I think it's now 6 consecutive seasons of him putting up over 0.7 XG per 90. At times it's been over 0.8. At times it's been over 1. Huge shot numbers. Like, he's a winger, but he's really shot heavy. He's at like 3.6 shots a game. So he can do all the kind of striker stuff. He's also super reliable on the ball. He's creative. He can dribble. He's a hard worker defensively, over 2 tackles and interceptions a game. So like really, really solid. He actually, I think briefly must have played under Ancelotti maybe before Ancelotti left in the 2017-2018 season. I think that would be just before Ancelotti left. And, you know, he can dribble too. Like last year playing up front, decent number of dribbles for the position. But when he plays as a winger, dribbles go way up. And again, decent for the position. So you're just looking at a guy who's like multifunctional. And
age profile's pretty good as well.
And let's be honest, you know, like you look at Real Madrid's attack and you're like, well, the first choice attack has Rodrigo and Vinicius. Amazing.
Not much.
What's the second choice attack?
Yeah.
Is it Asensio?
It's gone. PSG.
Exactly. Like, is it
Valverde on the right?
Is Joselu and something else? Like, it's concerning. So they do need top quality depth overall. And I'm not saying Gnabry's going to sign to be depth, but at least it means that you pay that front three for a year, and then the year following you've still got some depth. And I think he's 27, 28.
They really should just go and do an awful lot of money on Harry Kane. Like, I just think
it's a stopgap, and then like Mbappé comes, and you're like,
But then you play a front line of Mbappé, Vinicius, and Kane.
And Mbappé wants to play out on the right, doesn't he?
I just don't think
he probably ages pretty well in La Liga.
Yeah, he definitely does. I think he ends up being a player who drops deep, and Kane and Mbappe's running off him, and it's like I think he's just the perfect pivot for Mbappé.
He's the most. I mean, he doesn't have the mobility, but he is the most kind of Benzema type striker that you're going to get. Basically,
it's interesting.
What they shouldn't do is go and do something like Vlahovic. I think would be. He'd get lots of goals. He'd get quite a few goals for them, but I don't think it would maximise the side. And I think in the long run, you'd be like, we could do better than this.
Well, it feels like as well, if say Bayern Munich do eventually go, hey, yeah, here's the 100 mil for Harry Kane, Spurs are like, okay, we'll accept this. Surely then Real Madrid go, here's also 100. Because I think
they'll just wait a year.
You think Real Madrid wait?
They are the kings of picking up free transfers.
They are the kings of picking,
especially at that age.
Well, and also you mentioned it earlier about Bayern Munich. In January, they can go chat to him as easy as they want and offer him whatever he wants to.
And if Real Madrid missed out on Kane, I don't think they'd be like, oh, I can't believe it. You know, he'll be 31 next year. Like if he goes to Bayern, he might be amazing for Bayern. But I think Real Madrid will be philosophical about it and be like, every signing we make generally is a signing that can do us for a long time now. Like that is overwhelmingly their strategy.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I will have to pick. I think out of these options, Gnabry.
What?
Joe, you didn't even like your option.
I did. I think Arda Güler would be an amazing sign for him.
You didn't. Yeah, you pivoted
but he
in
can't
the
play
middle
striker.
Of it and you were like, sign Harry Kane.
Yeah, but that's not the budget option.
But the good thing about Kane is if you get Kane, you're basically saying, I think we're not going to get Mbappé. Yeah. And to a certain degree,
this summer, yeah.
No, maybe ever, because like I think that if you get Kane, it's quite, I don't know.
Get Mbappé for free.
Rodrigo's just exploded, like, and salary wise, I think it's going to be an issue. Like there are other factors in there, but at least if you go and get Kane, then you can say Kane probably does us for 3 years, 3-4 years. At the end of that, Endrick might be ready.
But I remember sitting there when being like, oh yeah, but now they've got all these midfielders, they're not going to go get Bellingham, and then they went and got Bellingham.
Sure.
I agree, mate. I agree. I'm not happy with the Gnabry decision there, though.
Well, it's a great decision.
Yeah, well, I'm the judge.
Wise.
So thank you very much. Well, that's the end of Sunday Vibes.
Oh yeah, that's the last player, isn't it?
That is the last player
we're doing.
I think we did quite a good job.
I think we did an alright job there. What do you guys at home think? Let us know your alternatives to the players we were talking about in the comments below. It seems like the Dominik Szoboszlai, I think, is moving fairly rapidly. So by the time you watch this video, that might well have happened. So apologies for that. Same with Mason Mount. The transfer window is shifting so quickly, though. You will be able to get a much up-to-date version of this on Monday Vibes.
Indeed.
So make sure you tune into that tomorrow morning. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. See you later.